Fortunately, we've gotten much better at predicting eruptions for the simple reason we've gotten much better at instrumenting volcanoes, not just with seismometers, but other instruments like continuous GPS receivers, tilt meters that can tell a change in slope on the volcano with an amount that's maybe 1/1000th of a degree. And we also have a whole new generation of satellites up in the sky that can tell us when the ground at a particular volcano is swelling. And it's literally inflating because the magma chamber system beneath the volcano is being pressurized with gas and a supply of new magma. What's really transformed volcano monitoring in the past 20 years, and certainly within the past 10, is the fact that we can have multiple real-time data streams coming in on a volcano from ground-based instruments as well as satellite-based instruments, such that we can see eruption precursors. Those eruption precursors consist of changes in gas emission, changes in groundwater chemistry if we've been sampling the groundwaters at the volcano on a regular basis, increases in the number of small magnitude earthquakes beneath the summit or nearby, changes in slope on the volcano that we can detect with both continuous GPS instruments and tilt meters, and looking at satellite imagery for hot pixels. In other words, gases are often some of the first things released as the magma is transiting in the crust, and the gases, because they've been in contact with the magma, are pretty much at the same temperature, and they will find cracks and zones of weakness to the surface because they're the most buoyant and mobile component that the magma is bringing towards the surface of the Earth. So if we look at satellites that give us infrared images, and we look at infrared data from satellites at night when there's a low background, we can tell subtle thermal anomalies associated with where new hot gases are coming to the surface. We're also fortunate in that many of the volcanoes, particularly the picturesque ones in Alaska and the Pacific Northwest and in the Andes, have summit glaciers. When these gases are escaping to the surface, they'll form new cracks in summit glaciers that have opened. And typically when you see the cracks forming in the summit glacier, followed by emission of volcanic gases that we can measure either from helicopters or fixed-wing aircraft, or a whole new generation of multi-gas sensors, we can get a real-time change and a measurement of what the volcano is doing. So there are a number of precursors that typically happen at a volcano before it erupts, and fortunately we know where the volcanoes are.
I'm curious about the eruption process itself. Are there specific steps or stages associated with a volcanic eruption?
Sometimes you'll see a migration of the small magnitude earthquakes towards the surface, but you've got to have a dense seismic network to kind of see that happen before your eyes. But we've done it successfully, for instance, at Mount St. Helens. We've seen it at Mount Etna in Italy, and it really depends how much of a lead time you get, depends on how good your in-ground monitoring instruments are. But typically you'll see changes in gas emission, you'll see increases in seismicity, and it's also that if you've got digital broadband seismometers, very high sensitive seismometers as part of your network, there's also information carried in the frequency content of these small earthquakes that tells us magma is on the move.
Does a volcano have a set supply of magma, or is it constantly being refreshed and augmented?
It's probably more episodic than anything. So in looking at the past eruptive histories of volcanoes that we have worldwide, we definitely know it's not a constant supply of magma that's being supplied unless it's a hotspot volcano like Hawaii. Typically what we have is periods of augmented growth in that volcano's history where you might have several eruptions over a course of, say, a few 10,000s of years, and then it goes quiet for another 10,000 years, but then it gets reactivated. Some of our oldest volcanic centers are on the order of, 1,000,000 years old. Others have only been active volcanic centers for a few 100,000 years.
If that's the case, then I know that magma is stored in huge chambers beneath the volcano itself. So what happens once all the magma is gone, the volcano is done erupting? What happens to the volcano then, and especially with these now empty chambers underneath?
Well, typically, when you have chambers that exceed, say 1,000 cubic kilometers, and these kind of classes of volcanoes have been referred to as supervolcanoes, where you're literally, within a matter of weeks to months, emptying a chamber that's 1,000 cubic kilometers. And what happens is the crust above this huge chamber system actually subsides. And so they're actually kind of sinister, because when you're looking on the landscape for a volcano, there's none that are obvious. In fact, what you've formed is a caldera. And typically, for instance, the Yellowstone caldera in the Four Corners region of the U.S., it actually forms a caldera that rivals the state of Rhode Island in terms of area.
So in other words, if you have a caldera that is a humongous size, that means that there was a volcano there that once blasted an awful lot of magma.
Yes. and another good example is Long Valley Caldera in California, in the eastern portion of the Sierra Nevadas, just east of the Sierra Nevadas. Another example is what is now Crater Lake in Oregon. There you had eruption not too long ago, about 7,700 years ago, of 50 cubic kilometers of magma. Not a super eruption, but still a very large eruption, typically putting ash out to, 50 kilometers up into the stratosphere, and certainly would have had global climate impact because of the amount of sulfur dioxide gas that was put up into the stratosphere during that event.
There's an important question I need to ask you, and that is, what is the Volcanic Explosivity Index, or VEI?
It's kind of a catch-all way to rank volcanoes and volcanic eruptions in terms of the impacts that they would have, and also their relative size. But it's also a matter of what kind of fragments were produced during the eruption. In other words, what is the proportion of ash that it produced versus ballistic fragments that typically settle half a kilometer from the vent. And it's an overall measure of how big an eruption was and how intense it was. Kind of a dual classification, if you will.
And I understand it's 0 through 8?
0 through 8. So something like Krakatoa 1883 is a 6. Tambora, is a 6 or maybe a 7. Things like Yellowstone and Long Valley, when they erupted, were 8s.
Wow.
They're at the end of the scale.
And we've been hearing a lot about Kilauea, a volcano in Hawaii, has been in the news. What exactly has been going on there with this volcano?
Okay, so Kilauea has been an eruption, and Kilauea is the youngest volcano that comprises the Big Island of Hawaii. There are actually 5 different shield volcanoes that comprise the Big Island of Hawaii. Kilauea is the youngest, and it forms the southeastern portion of the island. It's been erupting since 1983 for over 35 years now. What's changed is the fact that we've had a change in the eruptive points from which Kilauea is erupting. Up until late April, Kilauea was erupting from its summit crater at Halemaumau, and it was also erupting from a smaller vent down the rift lower in elevation towards the northeast called Pu'o'o. And what's changed is we've had catastrophic draining of the lava lake at Pu'o'o, as well as drop in the lava lake at Halemaumau and Kilauea's summit, and movement of magma from those 2 vents downrift in the subsurface to where it's emerged and created new fissure vents down in the Leilani subdivision and the Ilani Puna Garden District of the lower Puna zone. And we've got now as many as 22 fissures that have been active, many of them sourcing lava flows that have now reached the ocean. The other thing that we're seeing is Kilauea's summit has produced ash plumes that have ranged anywhere from 3,000 feet to as high as 30,000 feet on May 16th at 4:15 a.m. in the morning, Hawaii Standard Time, and that's caused us at the USGS Hawaii Volcano Observatory to put out a volcano observatory notice for radiation, because whenever you have a volcanic vent emitting ash up to 20 and 30,000 feet where commercial airlines fly, we have to get word out to the aviation sector as well as the general populace and all the emergency responders and land managers in the vicinity.
Charlie, we're running out of time, but I did want to step into the issue about supervolcanoes. We've been hearing an awful lot about supervolcanoes in the media. I know several science-oriented channels of TV have run specials about supervolcanoes, and we mentioned earlier about Yellowstone. What separates a supervolcano from just a regular volcano?
The fact that they've, in a single eruption, erupted on the order of 1,000 cubic kilometers of material. It's literally the size of the eruption that has ensued from, an event that may have taken place over several weeks to a month.
So what's the biggest eruption so far?
Probably the one from Toba in Sumatra in Indonesia. That happened about 74,000 years ago, and it put out on the order of 3,000 cubic kilometers of material. As a matter of fact, there's a constriction in the human genome right around then where probably there were less, humans on the planet in the aftermath.
We were talking about Yellowstone being predicted to erupt. How likely is that to happen, and when is it expected to erupt?
Well, in other words, the chances of another supervolcano eruption from Yellowstone happening are probably about 1 in a few million, because its last one was 640,000 years ago. However, Yellowstone is still powered by the heat from magma, the residual magma that's still at depth, and we have active hydrothermal vents and geysers. What is more probable at Yellowstone is that we have actually steam-driven explosions, and they've occurred, as recently as the 1930s as well as the 1890s, where you can have around several of hydrothermal pools where you've got hot water coming to the surface. You can actually have an explosion that can throw out bread box and refrigerator-sized fragments, a few hundred meters from the vent. And in a park, that has over 1 million visitors per year, that is a concern for us.
Dr. Charles Vanderbilt, thank you so much for taking time and basically telling us just about everything we wanted to know about volcanoes.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And I'm afraid that's all the time we have on this science edition of Press Conference USA.
Fisher 8 continues to erupt with a full channel and one major ocean entry at Kaboho. Hawaiian Volcano Observatory continues to monitor 3 other fissures that are weakly active. There is no immediate threat at this time. The National Weather Service reports that today through Thursday, light winds are expected to push fog into the Saddle and interior areas of the Big Island. Trade winds are predicted to return on Friday. Numerous resources continue to be available to residents of Hawaii County who suffered damage or losses from the Kilauea volcanic eruption and recent earthquakes. As of yesterday afternoon, 817 people have registered with the Federal Emergency Management Agency for assistance either online or at the Disaster Recovery Center. The Disaster Recovery Center is open daily from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and is located at the Keau High School gym. Tropic Care 2018 continues today and tomorrow with free medical, dental, and eye care at Keau High School from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. Additional screening days are scheduled for the coming weeks. There will be a community meeting at the Pahoa High School cafeteria today at 5 p.m. An American Sign Language interpreter will be on hand. We are on watch 24 hours a day for your safety. This is your Hawaii County Civil Defense Agency. Fissure 8 continues to erupt with a full channel flowing to the ocean with 2 ocean entries. Hawaiian Volcano Observatory also reports little splatter from Fissure 6. The National Weather Service reports that after nightfall today, winds will push volcanic emissions into the interior of the Big Island, including over Hilo, northern parts of the island and wrapping around to the west. SO2 and Billy's hair may become an issue in Kaho'a and possibly into the Hawaiian Acres area. Trade winds are expected to build by Thursday. As of today, 894 people have registered with the Federal Emergency Management Agency for assistance either online or at the Disaster Recovery Center or DRC. The DRC is one of many resources that continue to be available to residents of Hawaii County who suffered damage or losses from the Kilauea volcanic eruption and recent earthquakes. The DRC is open daily from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and is located at the Kilauea High School gym. Tonight's regularly scheduled community meeting at the Kilauea High School cafeteria at 5 p.m. will include representatives from the Small Business Administration and FEMA. An American Sign Language interpreter will be on hand. The Hawaii Department of Health will be holding volcanic ash and fog community meetings tomorrow and on Thursday. Wednesdays is at Kanata Elementary School in Kilauea beginning at 5 p.m. Thursdays is at Waikoloa Elementary and Middle School cafeteria beginning at 6 p.m. Tropic Care 2018 continues today and tomorrow with free medical, dental and eye care at Kilauea High School from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. We are on watch 24 hours a day for your safety. This is your Hawaii County Civil Defense Agency. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center reports a 4.4 magnitude earthquake occurred at 2:24 p.m., centered in the vicinity of the south side of Kilauea Volcano. This earthquake was not large enough to cause a tsunami for the island of Hawaii, repeating there is no tsunami threat to the island of Hawaii. We are on watch 24 hours a day for your safety. This is your Hawaii County Civil Defense Agency.
Island farmers near the lava flow are taking a big hit, missing multiple shipments of fruits, vegetables, and flowers meant to go to other parts of the state and the mainland. Lynn Kawano continues our team coverage.
With the flow going right through Kapoho, many of the farmers in this area had to take what they could, not only from their homes, but from the fields. They left most of the crop behind. This was the driveway for Jenny and Rusty Perry, who own Kapoho Grown Farms. The channelized flow blocks access to their home and the orchards. To get to the crops, they have to take unpaved back roads and go through multiple gates that belong to the neighbors. What used to take just a few minutes now takes an hour, and they work with the fast-moving lava flow only about a football field away.
This is longan. Dragon Eye, it's called.
The Perrys have longan, papaya fields, lychee, and apple bananas. Kapoho Grown has been their life's work for decades.
everybody was frantically trying to get everything out.
They evacuated their home weeks ago, leaving behind ripe, profitable fruit.
We missed a few harvests because we didn't know that we could come in till our neighbor said, go through my property. Cut the fence. If you have to cut the fence, cut the fence. So we did.
Under the constant sounds of choppers buzzing above, the Perrys and 2 employees are now able to work a few days a week, taking what they can, but always leaving before dark.
I would much rather be here, but we're we don't really want to spend the night here anymore, because it's can't tell what's going to happen. You can look over there and see the flow going down, and there's nothing that says it has to go in that direction.
The State Department of Agriculture estimates losses due to the eruption event at more than $14 million for farming operations. The Perrys will harvest as much as possible for as long as possible, but even if the river of lava doesn't crest the banks, the air quality could also wipe out the crops.
Aloha kakahiaka. My name is Noinoi Wong Wilson. I'm Executive Director of Lalakea Foundation. And Lalakea Foundation is a nonprofit that is based here in Hilo, comprised of kumuhula from Hawaii Island and across Hawaii to Pai'aina. We began in 2000. Our first president and still member is Dr. Pua Kanahele, as well as her sister Nalani Kanakaole from this island, and prominent kumus from every island. Our purpose for Lalakea Foundation is to preserve and perpetuate Hawaiian cultural practices, and in particular hula, oli or chant, and the attendant arts that support those arts. And beginning in 2001, we began what we call the Hula Conference, Ka'aha Hula o Halawa Ola, and it started here in Hilo. So the very first one was in Hilo, and it was very successful. We had about 1,000 people come from the islands and from around the world, really, to study with our hula masters and experts and learn and elevate the practice of hula, not only in Hawaii but everywhere. In 2005, this AHA went to Maui. We do it every 4 years. In 2009 to Oahu. In 2014, it took a year longer for Kauai to put theirs together, and it's returning again this coming summer in June. And we have followed the path of Hi'iaka in the Mo'olelo of Hi'iaka and Pele. So this will probably be our last one here in this form. We're looking for, in June, from the 14th to the 23rd, about 1,200 people coming to the island to join us with this in 10 days of learning and experiencing high-level quality learning through workshops, presentations, and hula activities. We will, while we're based in Hilo, and we'll be using Ho'olulu Center complex for our activities, as well as the University of Hawaii Community College, and Kahakaula o Ke'elikolani, the Hawaiian Language College, for our presentations. We actually will be taking our people throughout the Pai'aina, or throughout the island. So every one of our districts will be hosting our visitors, and they'll be visiting the Wahipana and the sacred sites and our special sites, like taking people down to Miloli'i, for example, to Kukui Pahuara in Kohala, to visit the pathway of Kamehameha in North Kohala. So we are asking for support from our county council, because it does take a lot. Even though we're charging a minimal amount for registration, it takes a lot to put this together. So mahalo for letting us be here, and mahalo for Representative Councilwoman David for submitting this resolution. Thank you.